What is up everyone, it is Sajambi and welcome back to another video. As one of the newest streamers in the world of competitive Island Royale, I have seen firsthand the current state of the comp scene and how it has developed over the past year or so. With many tournament finals featuring the same big names, I would love to see IR tournaments thrive with new players and contenders challenging for the top spot. Not only does this add a bigger range of styles to the pool, but it also means that everyone has to up their game in a changing landscape. So in this video, I'll be running through my guide to success when playing Island Royale competitively, which will feature all of the basic knowledge plus the tips you need to compete at the highest levels. So let's get into it. The start of the game is a time for many players to set their stalls out early and get themselves in a good position. On the flip side, it can also be a place where everything can come crashing down at the very start. Before you even begin your descent, you or your team will need to find a designated landing spot which will be yours to claim. That might either be a named area on the map, or any place in between which has enough loot to support all of your team. Straight from the drop, your main focus should be picking up a gun of any quality. You might spot other people nearby, but if you don't have a weapon, the chances of you making it out unscathed will be slim to none. Once you and your partner have some sort of defense, you can then loot your location while being wary of your surroundings. While players in tournaments tend to be more conservative in games, you may still be contested from the drop, meaning you have a decision to make. Either you loot and run to avoid any confrontation, or you stay and fight to potentially pick up some points and upgrade your loot. Your decision will likely depend on your confidence levels and what loot you have at your disposal. Fights in the early game are largely a coin flip for most players, so if you do choose to fight, be prepared to change your tactics if you get taken out. You can probably get away with dying off spawn twice, but if you are constantly being contested and not winning your fights, it might be time to change location to somewhere which allows you to make it to at least the mid game. Once you have claimed your spot as your own, you can then take everything you can from your spot, that being weapons, heals, ammo and materials. Once you leave a location, you probably won't go back to it, so take absolutely everything you can so you can be prepared for later in the game. Which brings me to my next point: material management. Running out of materials midway through the game is one of the biggest mistakes you can make in Island Royale tournaments. But while rotating and basing might be very costly to your material bank, they are necessary to lock your spot on the map and defend you from shots while you move. You need to be constantly aware of the number of builds you have left, as you could be caught out if your pool suddenly runs dry. Like with my previous point, you can do most of the heavy lifting in the early game as you gather mats while the game is in its infancy. Most locations have mineable furniture and fixtures which only take a couple of hits to destroy, while giving you a heavy boost in your materials. Combine this with the trees, rocks and cars that you find throughout the map, and you'll have a near endless supply of materials which you can tap into to keep your builds at a good level. You can use them to force fights and collect more materials from loot piles, but your material management skills will be put to the test in the end game, where constant cover will be needed. At the end of the game, the zone will begin to move around the map, meaning everyone has to rotate to save themselves from the storm. This is the most chaotic part of the game, and people can come from anywhere to deal damage and refresh their own loot. Having builds here will grant you the cover to keep rotating, and also give you the opportunity to position yourself on height or in any way which will give you the jump over your opponents. Good aim can bail you out in many situations, but you will find that it's the players who have the builds in the end game which come out on top, as they can defend themselves from oncoming shots. Obviously, if you have no builds, then you are relying on your opponent to miss a shot, so if you have a spare minute in the game, why not gather more materials to keep your stock level healthy? Another thing to think about when in game is where you are on the map in relation to the safe zone. To keep yourself one step ahead of the competition, you always need to keep an eye on the map, especially when a new safe zone has just been announced. Long rotations can kill off any chance of late game, since you're spending most of the game crossing the map rather than looting or gathering materials. Similar to this, not realizing you are already in a safe zone can mean you are missing an opportunity to claim an area as your own or to block rotating enemies from entering. This tip is all about thinking ahead rather than thinking in the moment. Players that are proactive in their movement and seek out opportunities to rotate rather than reactive are normally the ones who end up pressuring those around them. Is there an area of elevation in the new safe zone? You might want to move there and be the first ones to claim it. Are you unsure where the zone will head next? If you move to the middle of the current zone, you are almost guaranteed to have at least part of the safe zone on you or close to you. It's thinking like this which sets the great players apart from the rest. So the next time you can take a breath in between fights, just spare a thought for your future pathing, including all of the important locations and what might lie in the way. Communication is one of the most important attributes of a tournament winning duo or trio. Having constant callouts that you can both understand is key to understanding where both of you physically stand on the map, but also figuratively in the game. If you spot something which a teammate can use, call it out. If you need healing or shielding which you know a teammate has, call it out. If you spot enemies that your teammates aren't aware of, call it out. Gathering information is key in any game mode, solo, duo or trio. But info gaps between teammates can lead to slip-ups, since one player might not be aware of something that the other player already knows. If you see an item which your teammate can use, like a shield pot, but don't call it out, that means that your teammate might have a health disadvantage when going into the next fight. Similarly, you might see an enemy coming in your direction, but if you don't say anything, then your teammate might get caught out since they might not have seen it. Even callouts which might not be useful at the time might be crucial later in the game. If you tag someone for significant damage, that means either they now have low health or they now have a low amount of healing items since they have just used them to reverse the damage you have just put on them. Another sticking point comes from when you call something out but your teammate doesn't understand what you are saying. This can come from bad mics or bad connections, but more often comes from vague callouts related to locations or features on the map. If you say over there or on the hill, then that's not very clear. In that situation, you can point out a location either by pinging it or using the compass at the top of your screen to call out a number related to the direction you are looking in. Comms become more important as the game goes on, so if you find yourself in an endgame situation, be prepared to bounce ideas off teammates regularly so you are both aligned on information and what to do with it. At the very top of the leaderboard, you will normally find fragging machines who can drop 10 kills, win the game, and then go on with their day. Renegade. But for others, it can be a slog to pick up points and edge up the scoreboard. So if you struggle with getting kills regularly, you might want to play it slow and play for placement. While getting kills is an easy way to get points, getting constantly high placings in each game can mean you rack up serious points, which could mean you advance further in a tournament. As an example, to qualify for the semi-finals of June Jubilation 2021, you just needed 11 points, and to qualify for the finals, you just needed 13. There was a scenario where you could have gotten to the finals of the whole thing by not getting a single kill. All your team needed to do was place in the top 5 in 4 out of the 5 quarter-final games, and then again in all of the semi-final games. So while getting kills will give your points tally a nice boost, playing for placement points is a viable option if you are not that confident in your fighting abilities. Finally, let's talk about finishing the job in-game. Endgame can be the most hectic part of the match, as everybody jostles for position while avoiding the storm and other players. In these moments, every previous decision made by you and your team will be reckoned with, as you use your remaining materials, heals and ammo to close out the game. In these endgame battles, it's usually a coin flip as to who comes out on top, unless there is a dramatic gap in health, skill or loadout. During moving zones, it is very possible that you can move undetected to your opponents as they focus on their rotation. If you find yourself at the front of the moving pack, you can use your position to block off enemies using walls and cut them off from their own rotation and pick them off when they least expect it. Getting onto high ground will also be advantageous, since you can look down and assess the battlefield safely and be able to pick off anyone who is rotating without cover. The final fight between the last two teams is usually an all-in against each other, with one team normally forcing the play. The team that pushes for the win is normally the one that comes out on top, since they are prepared for the fight while the other team is either rotating or healing up. Another way to win is to win in a heal off. If you aren't confident enough in your own abilities to finish, you can let the storm do the job for you. Rounds have been won before where one player waits in the storm with medkits and campfires while the rest of the field bleeds out to the storm, which will be dealing 10 damage per second at that point. Despite this, I would recommend going all in on your opponents for the final fight, as you can get a major boost in points from the win and the kills that go along with it. And that is all. Tournaments don't come along too often, so you won't have too many chances to practice in a competitive setting between each event. The closest regular practice is the scrims which take place in the Island Royale tournament server. You can find a link to that down below. As with many competitive games, there will be a learning curve as you put these tips to the test, but every player has to start somewhere. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and comment down below what tips you have for when playing in tournaments. To support the channel and to be notified of future videos, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!